Welcome to Raising Lions with Pastor Joseph. We're talking about raising strong, responsible, grounded children in a world that's making it harder every single day. Today, I want to talk about something that hits a little bit different because this is one of those subjects that the older I get, it hits a little bit harder. I'm serious. My son turned 24 this week, and preparing for this episode, I was really hit hard. Let me tell you something you don't realize when you're in the moment. You don't get the years back. Amen? You don't get the years back. Parents, listen to me today. Your children are growing up while you're in the midst of life. You're going to work, you're paying bills, you're trying to get everybody to school, you're running to ball practice and dance and church and appointments and grocery stores, and you're answering emails and you keep checking messages and you're trying to keep the house from falling apart. And meanwhile, childhood's happening, right? And one of the dangerous things about parenting is that most of the moments you eventually miss, they don't feel important while they're happening. That little child asking you to sit down and watch the same cartoon for the 20th time, one day they won't ask. That little boy that's begging you to go outside and throw the ball with him, there'll be a last time. The little girl that asks you to tuck her in, there'll be a last time for that too. And here's what makes it very difficult. You don't know when that last time is the last time. You don't know. You spend so much of your parenting saying, I'll be glad when they can dress themselves. I'll be glad when they can drive. I'll be glad when they're done with diapers, right? You're always looking forward to the next stage of life. I'll be glad when I don't have to take them everywhere. And then suddenly, guess what? They can. And you start wondering where all the time went. Look, this episode's not about making parents feel guilty because they have jobs and responsibilities. You have to work, you have to pay bills. Life has to happen. But this episode is about asking ourselves a very serious question. Am I actually present for the season that I'm in, or am I so busy trying to survive it that I'm going to miss everything? And there's another side to this that we're going to get into today. You don't just lose the years to enjoy, right? You don't just lose those years of your children being fun. You can lose years to train them too. You don't get the toddler years back when no should have started meaning no. You don't get those early elementary years back when you teach responsibility and chores and respect and consequences, and those should have been becoming normal in their life. And if you keep putting parenting off because they're little, eventually they're not little anymore. Then you're trying to establish boundaries at 15 that you should have already done at 5. So today, we're going to talk about both sides of this. Enjoy them while you have them, and train them while you have them. Because guess what? The clock is ticking either way. You know, one of the biggest challenges facing parents today is that we can be in the same room as our children without actually being in the same room. You get my drift? And the phone has made that incredibly easy. I'm not against phones. I use one. You use one. We work from them. We communicate through them. We pay bills and answer messages on them. Now, I'm not against technology, but somewhere along the way, that little device started demanding every spare second of our attention, didn't it? We see it in adults. We see it even in children that have phones. Think about how often that happens. Your child comes into the room wanting to tell you something and you're scrolling, right? They're talking and you're like, yeah, okay. But you haven't looked up one time. And children know the difference between somebody who's hearing them and listening to them and whether they're not or they're preoccupied. That doesn't mean your child needs your undivided attention 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's unrealistic. But I'm going to be honest with you. They need moments when they know that mom is there and dad is there. And right now, I matter more than whatever's on that screen. We've also created families that are unbelievably busy, right? There's something every single night: school, sports, travel ball, dance, church, tutoring, practices, meetings. And none of those things in and of themselves are bad things. But sometimes we've scheduled so much for our children that we've eliminated the very thing we say that we're doing it all for, right? A family. Everybody's going somewhere, but I'll be honest, nobody's actually together. Many families are eating in cars, checking calendars. We're yelling, hurry up, we're late. Then we wonder why everybody in the house feels so much stress. And at some point, parents have to stop and they need to really ask, are we building a childhood or are we just managing a schedule? Because your child probably isn't going to grow up remembering whether you made every single extracurricular activity possible, but they're going to remember sitting around a dinner table laughing. Amen. They're going to remember dad taking them fishing. They're going to remember mom riding around with mom talking about nothing important. They're going to remember Sunday afternoon naps and family vacations and making pancakes and throwing the football in the yard and sitting on the porch. Man, I can remember as a child throwing the football with my dad. Then most of the things that form our deepest memories are surprisingly ordinary. And I think sometimes as parents, we're trying so hard to give our children more than we had that we accidentally give them less of ourselves. Bigger Christmases, more expensive phones, another trip, another activity, another tournament. But children don't just need what we can provide. I want to remind you of something today, parents, they need you. And that's where I think every parent, including me, has to examine ourselves. When I'm home, you need to ask, are you really home? When your child talks, do you look at them? Are you listening? When your family's together, is the phone constantly in your hand? Have I become so busy that providing a life for my family that I'm rarely participating in it? Because there's always going to be another email, amen? There's always going to be another notification. There's always going to be something at work that needs attention, but our child is only this age once. You can earn more money. You can answer the message later. You can finish the work tomorrow, but you can't get back the time. You can't make your 8-year-old 8 again. And that's not a call to abandon your responsibility. I know you have that. It's a call to recognize that there are things that can't be replaced. So maybe one of the first changes some families need is not another parenting technique. Maybe it's just this: put the phone down. Leave some evenings empty. Sit at the table, go outside, ask a question, and actually listen to the answer. And that's quality time. Because listen, the goal isn't simply to live in the same house with your children. The goal is to actually be there while they're growing up. You know, one of the strangest things about parenting is how often we wish away every season that we're going to miss later. When they're babies, we're like, I'll be glad when they sleep through the night. My son and his wife are dealing with that now. When they're toddlers, I'll be glad when they can do more for themselves. When they start school, I'll be glad when I don't have to keep up with all of this, right? I mean, we're always wanting to get to the next level and the next stage. Then middle school comes, and then high school comes, and then suddenly you're looking at graduation pictures wondering how in the world we got here so fast. Can I get a witness from somebody? And I think a lot of parents live in a constant state of waiting for the next stage instead of learning to appreciate the one that we're in now. Now, look, I understand every stage has its frustrations. I'm not romanticizing parenting. Toddlers can wear you out. Teenagers can test every ounce of patience that you have. And there's seasons when you're tired and stressed and worried and just trying to get everybody through the week. I get it. But I think in those moments, even then, you have to be careful that you don't spend the entire season saying, I'll be glad when this is over, because guess what? Eventually, it will. And some things that annoy you today are going to be the very things you miss. The shoes in the hallway, the backpacks on the floor, the noise that comes from their bedrooms, the endless questions, the rides to practice. You're going to miss it. The refrigerator being emptied every other day. There will come a day when the house is quieter, and quiet sounds wonderful until you realize why it's quiet. So I want to encourage you, slow down enough to notice your children, take pictures, but don't experience everything through the camera, right? Go to the ball game and actually watch the ball game. Sit at the table without everybody holding a device. Right? Talk in the car instead of immediately turning the radio on or something on. Create traditions that don't have to cost anything. I don't know, a Friday night pizza night or Saturday morning breakfast together. I don't know. Whatever it is for your family. Maybe you take a walk after dinner. Maybe you pray together before everybody leaves for school. I don't know. But small things that are repeated consistently become family memories. And guess what? This is important too. Your child doesn't need a perfect childhood to have a meaningful childhood. They don't need Disney every year. They don't need the newest phone. They don't need you to spend money that you don't have trying to manufacture memories. And that's what so many parents do. Sometimes what they'll remember most is simply that you showed up. And there's a temptation today to believe that good parenting means constantly giving our children all the experiences, even the ones we didn't have. And sometimes good parenting sometimes is giving them your presence. So stop rushing. Stop rushing. Not everything has to be optimized. Not every weekend has to be scheduled. Not every hour needs an activity. Sometimes the greatest thing that you can give your family is an evening where nobody has anywhere they have to be or anything they have to do, because childhood is not something you get to rewind. You don't get to say at 50 or 60 years old, I was too busy the first time, let me try that again. I want to remind you, you get one shot at this season. And while you're enjoying it, you also have another responsibility, which brings us to something I think our culture gets wrong every single time. And that's enjoying them, but not indulging them. When people hear somebody say, enjoy your children while they're little, there's a dangerous way that message can get twisted. It can become, they're only little once, so let them have as much fun as possible. Don't be strict. They'll grow out of it. Pick your battles. They're just expressing themselves. And suddenly enjoying childhood turns into avoiding parenting, and those are not the same thing. You can enjoy your child and still tell them no. You can make wonderful memories with them and still require them to clean their room. You can laugh with them and wrestle with them and take them places and spoil them occasionally and still have boundaries. And so many homes have no rules and no boundaries and almost zero enforcement. In fact, part of loving the season you're in is recognizing that it's also the season when training is the easiest. Look, if your child is 3 years old and throws themselves on the floor because they didn't get what they wanted, that's not just an irritating moment that you have to survive as a parent. Man, that's a teaching moment. That's when you begin to instill in them. If your 5-year-old refuses to clean up their toys, that's an instruction moment. If your 7-year-old talks disrespectfully to mom, that's a training moment. And if we continually say they'll grow out of it, it's not a big deal. Those little behaviors grow into big behaviors. And then the parent who didn't want to upset their 5-year-old is suddenly terrified of upsetting their 15-year-old. Is anybody there? That's why in all of my videos and my podcasts, you'll hear me saying it over and over. Start early. Early parenting is not about being harsh. It's about making expectations normal before rebellion enters their life and becomes a lifestyle. When they grow up knowing that there's rules and consequences and you're going to enforce the boundaries, those things become part of a normal structure of the home. They know, right? There are things we do. There are things we don't do. There's consequences when we make bad choices, and mom and dad mean what they say. And now don't get me wrong, that doesn't guarantee you'll never have problems. That doesn't guarantee your children to grow up to be perfect. Every child has a will. Every teenager is going to test boundaries at some point. But what I'm saying is you ought to be laying the foundation. And the longer you wait to lay that foundation, the harder the work is going to become. The earlier you lay that foundation, the easier parenting is. And I tell parents all the time, correcting behavior at 4 is easier than correcting the same behavior at 14. A 4-year-old throwing a tantrum because you turned off the TV, that's better than a 14-year-old because they may scream and curse and slam doors and threaten you and refuse to cooperate because you took away their phone. And sometimes parents act like that behavior somehow appeared overnight. Guess what? It didn't. It grew because you didn't handle it at 4. The arguments get longer. The disrespect gets stronger. The boundaries get pushed a little bit further, right? And each time you back down, they learn something. If I push long enough, the boundary is going to move. So when I say you don't get these years back, I don't mean I don't just mean the vacations and the bedtime stories and the ball games. I mean, you don't get the training years back either. You don't get to rewind and teach the 6-year-old what you avoided teaching them when they're 16, right? You don't get to go back. Can you change things at 16? Absolutely, but it's going to require way more work and more patience and more resistance, because now you're trying to undo patterns that have been reinforced for years, for decades in some cases. So enjoy them. Absolutely enjoy your kids. Take the pictures, go outside, laugh till your stomach hurts. Make the memories, absolutely. But don't confuse love with indulgence. Don't confuse kindness with weakness. And don't confuse enjoying childhood with removing every single boundary that makes childhood safe and productive. Because one day, your child isn't just going to need memories of a parent who loved them. Those are good, but they're going to need the character that parent helped build. Enjoy them while they're little, but train them while they're little too, right? Train them while they're young, because you don't get that opportunity back. So what do you want to remember? At some point, every parent has to ask a question that's bigger than behavior, schedules, grades, sports, and everything else that's competing for our attention. What do you want to remember about these years that you're putting in and going through right now? And maybe just as important, what do you want your children to remember about these years? What do you want them to remember about you? Do you want them to remember that you were always rushing and irritated and always staring at a screen, always saying not right now? Or do you want them to remember that conversations in the car and meals around the table and sitting in the stands and laughing in the living room and working together and praying together and actually knowing who your children were becoming at the time? Because parenting is made up of thousands of ordinary moments, and most of them will never make a photo album. They'll never be posted online, but those ordinary moments are relationships. They're relationship builders, right? And at the same time, what do I want my child to remember about the way I parented them? Man, I hope they remember love. I hope they remember laughter. I hope they remember that home was a place where they belonged. But I also hope they remember that I loved them enough to tell them the truth. Amen? To tell them no. I hope they remember that I expected something from them. I hope they remember that when they had a bad decision, I didn't always rescue them from the outcome, right? I didn't bail them out of everything. I hope they remember that my rules weren't there because I wanted to control them, but because I was trying to prepare them for something. Because I'm not always going to be there. One day your children are going to understand things they don't understand right now. The teenager who thinks you're being unreasonable because you won't buy them everything they want in life is going to understand when they're paying their own bills. That child who thinks chores are unfair, they may understand. They think it's unfair now, but when they're responsible for their own home, they'll get it. That teenager who thinks consequences are cruel are going to eventually realize you were teaching them that choices have outcomes. And a lot of parenting is planting seeds that you don't fully see grow and develop until your children are out from under your roof. So don't measure every parenting decision by whether your child appreciates it today. Sometimes they're not going to. Measure it by this. Is it helping them prepare the person that they're going to become? Are going to need to become. And while you're doing that, enjoy them. That's where I think parents can get way out of whack and out of balance. Some parents are so focused on discipline that every interaction becomes correction. Others are so focused on making memories that they stop correcting anything at all. Man, we got to stop being on opposite ends of that extreme and come together. We need both. We need relationship and responsibility. We need memories and maturity. We need laughter and limits. And there should be times when your kid hears the word no, but there should also be times when they hear, come sit with me. There should be consequences, but there should also be hugs. There should be chores. And there should be afternoons when everybody does absolutely nothing. And we just sit around and enjoy being together. Because listen to me, raising children is not just a project to complete. It's a relationship to experience. And one day, a whole lot sooner than you think, the relationship changes. They're not asking your permission anymore. They're going to be making their own decisions. They're going to be building homes of their own and families of their own. They're going to be raising children of their own. They're not going to need you anymore. And then your role is going to become different. So while you still have this season, I want to challenge you today, parent, be in it. Don't spend all of the day preparing for tomorrow and miss today. Man, so many parents do that. But also don't spend all of today keeping them happy and fail to prepare them for tomorrow either. Enjoy the season and listen, use the season. Listen, raise them while you have them. Look, I want to close this episode with a challenge. Don't hear this message and walk away feeling guilty about everything that you've missed. Listen, regret is a horrible way to live. Every one of us could look back and find moments we wish we handled differently. I do. I've got grown kids. I wish I could go back and do things different. That's not where I want us to stay. You can't change yesterday, but you can decide what you're going to do with today. If you've been distracted, put the phone down. Amen. If your family schedule has become ridiculous, then some things need to come off the calendar. If you stop sitting around the table together, start doing it again. If you haven't told your child lately that you're proud of them, tell them today. If you've been putting off the conversation, have it today. If you've been putting off parenting because you don't want the conflict, stop postponing it now, today. Set the boundary, establish the rule, determine the consequence, and then enforce it. Because look, the same clock that's taking away the little moments is also taking away your opportunity to prepare them for when they're going to be an adult. One day you're not going to have a 10-year-old who needs you to teach responsibility. One day you're not going to have a 14-year-old who needs you to establish boundaries. Eventually, listen, you're going to have an adult standing in front of you, and your job is going to be different then. So don't spend these years wishing that they were older. And then don't spend the years pretending they're younger than they really are either. Parent in the season you're in. Amen. Love them while you got them. Enjoy who they are. Correct what needs to be corrected. Teach what needs to be taught. Hold the boundary when it needs to be held. And listen, make some memories along the way. I know this is kind of sad. There'll be a last ride to school. Whew. There'll be a last ball game, a last bedtime, a last family vacation under the same roof, a last Christmas morning before somebody has a family of their own. And most likely you're not going to realize that you're experiencing the last one until it's already gone. Be there. Amen. And while you're there, do the work that God has given you. Because your job as parents is not to keep your children little forever. It is to love them deeply, train them faithfully, and prepare them to stand on their own. That's what I mean when I say, raise them ready, hard now, ready later. But don't forget the other side of that too. Enjoy the hard days too. Enjoy the loud noise. Enjoy the questions, the mess, the season, because you can make more money. I know I've said it already. You can replace a phone. You can change jobs. You can rearrange a schedule. But there's one thing that none of us can buy, and none of us can replace, and none of us can recover. It's time. You don't get the years back, so raise them while you have them. Amen? Look, thanks for listening to the Raising Lions with Pastor Joseph podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this conversation and this growing community of parents who want to raise strong, responsible, and grounded children. A new episode drops every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube as well. I'd love for you to go there and follow us, download the podcast, share it with a parent. You can also find the podcast, parenting resources, updates, and more at www.raisinglionsfamily.com. RaisingLionsFamily.com. Look, until next time, remember, we're raising lions. Raise them ready. God bless you.